Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason, just south of Hartford, Illinois. And this episode I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm actually going to be traveling a scenic byway. You'll be seeing like me, driving on the road. And it's 33 miles long. It's in Illinois, just on the other side of the Mississippi River, opposite Missouri. So the scenic byway I'll be driving today is called the Meeting of the Great Rivers Scenic Byway. This is where the Mississippi River will meet and either start or end the Missouri River as well as the Illinois River, both of which, or actually all of which, are major rivers in the United States. So it's definitely going to be really cool. We'll be going through a few small towns, including one major city, and we'll be stopping at some sites. There's also some historical markers based on the Meeting of the Great Rivers Scenic Byway. So I can't wait to show you it all. We'll be also going through two different counties as well. I'm in Madison County right now, and both ends of the Scenic Byway are marked with the sculpture right behind me. I'll show it to you in a minute. But yeah, it's going to be a fun journey, and let's see how this goes. So it's going to be a one-of-a-kind first for me as well as everyone. All right, here we go. All right, so over there is going to be our first stop. That's going to be the tower where you can view both Mississippi and Missouri rivers where they meet. But this is going to be at the other end as well. I don't know how long it's been here now. I believe it was 2003 when this was designated as the Meeting of the Great Rivers Scenic Byway. But I think they wanted to create something very touristy, for those who want to see history in action and all that. Now, for those who have traveled the Great River Road, this will not be any different because, yeah, it's going to be pretty much the same thing. Still, it's going to be very entertaining. And here's just a little parts of the sculpture. See if there's anything on the back. Nope. So the front is supposed to represent the Missouri, I believe, because yes, it starts like right there at the Mississippi and then goes that way. And then that is the Illinois one, the white one. And then you can't really see it. Yeah, that is supposed to represent the Mississippi River. And that, of course, makes up for plenty of state lines, including Mississippi, Missouri, Illinois, and plenty of others. Alright, so this is me driving, and I'm leaving the Lewis and Clark State Historic Site, which is just off Route 3, just a few miles north of I-270. And so here is the Pogue Road and Route 3 Great River Road Junction, and here is the map. Let me turn it on where we can see where I'll be driving. Alright, here we go. So in the red, I'll be going north, south, east, west, yada, 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 but I'll be going the same way as following the Mississippi and the Illinois rivers, mostly on routes 3 and 100. But it'll be a fun journey. Like I said, there's going to be lots of communities, big and small, here and there, so let's check it out. And it looks like the stoplight is still... I'm pretty much at a standstill. So anybody who's coming from there, be aware. Yeah. But I'm facing east right now. And I hope it's my turn to turn because I'll be going north on Route 3. Alrighty. Making the turn onto Route 3. And on the right is a sign, Meeting of the Great Rivers, where it actually begins. And then on the left we see the Confluence Tower. We're going over Piasa Creek, the bridge. And then that sign where I was, it's on the right. Or it will be on the right, sorry. Here it is. Alright. So we're going to briefly stop at the tower real quick as we go into Hartford, Illinois. All right, so the first stop is what is known as the Confluence Tower. This opened up during the mid-2000s, and unfortunately, we will not be going in there today because of construction. Yeah, they are open during certain times of the week, but for a small fee, you can actually go up all 3 of those floors. And to the top, I mean, you can see it all. You can probably see the downtown city skyline of St. Louis as well as Alton. But I think on the second floor, you can see the what do you call it, the meeting of the rivers of Mississippi and Missouri. But I've been up there before, and if I can find the pictures, I'll definitely put them up on the screen. So enjoy. Now right in front of me is the National Great Rivers Museum. I've been there once. It is a great museum. And behind it is the Melvin Price Lock and Dam number 20. I believe that is available for tours as well. But yeah, definitely, I mean, if you got extra time, come check out this museum. It's free admission. Yeah, they do have tours here, okay, of the lock. It's like 10, 1, and 3. Very cool. All right, well, we're gonna head our way into Alton, Illinois. right, now I'm in the Great Rivers city of Alton, a city that's been around for more than 200 years. I don't know where to start as far as mentioning or talking about Alton, because there's so much to this town, or I shouldn't say town, but it's a river city. But yes, there's plenty to discover. There's lots of restaurants, food, fun, lots of festivals and events. In fact, the first Mississippi River Festival in 40-some years is going to happen here pretty shortly. By the end of the month in June 2025, there's lots of statues, history, mom and pop places to go, shops, antiques, and of course, I can't leave out the fact that it is one of the most haunted towns in America. But let me show you around quite a little bit. All right, so that is the Alton Visitor Center. Be sure to check the hours. They have plenty of information. That is the Argosy Casino. Back in the day, it was known as the Alton Bell. Some people still call it the Alton Bell. I do sometimes. But here's a little historical marker in that little sheltered zone right here. Ah yes, Alton Center for Arts and Culture. And so it talks about the Jacoby Arts Center, which is just up that way. There's also the Alton Little Theater, Illinois. I did not know it was Illinois Oldest Community Theater. But there's also Riverfront Park, and talks about the Christian Hill Historic District, Middletown, Upper Alton. Oh yeah, there's definitely a lot that Alton has to offer as far as like history, fun, food, you name it. Historical aspect, yes. Two giants are from here. Well, one literally a giant. There's Robert Wadlow, the tallest man recorded in history. There's also Miles Davis. Both have statues dedicated to them. Another person or persons that has statues dedicated to them in Alton and has much to do with the history of Alton is Abraham Lincoln to the right, and that is his opponent Stephen Douglas. This was one of 7 stops where all over Illinois they did their senatorial debates in 1858. I would definitely want to do a series on this sometime soon, so I would definitely have to go literally all the way around the state and do a little tour of how the local debates affected the community and the rest of the nation, and of course the Civil War. But yes, this is definitely a must for any Abraham Lincoln historian. There's a few other sites around here as well. Alright, here is the Piasa bird. There are a lot of legends. I visited here many times when I was a kid. I remember coming here a couple times with my Cub Scout troop, and I was here on a field trip. I remember we were all looking for arrowheads and rocks, weird kind of rocks that we believe to be old. And there's a historical marker just right here that tells the story about it. This was put up by the Illinois State Historical Society in 1984. The legend of the Piasa. In 1673, Pere Marquette reported that he and fellow French explorer Louis Joliet discovered a painting of what was probably 2 water monsters on the bluffs of the Mississippi River near present-day Alton. By 1700, those pictographic creatures were no longer visible. In 1836, the novelist John Russell described an image cut into the bluff of a legendary dragon-like creature with wings. According to Russell, the creature was called Piasa, the bird that devours men. That version of the pictograph, as well as myths about the Piasa, have become prominent in folklore. Oh yeah. Now, believe it or not, this has been the subject of controversy because many car accidents have happened in this stretch because people have stopped on the Great River Road just to look at it while driving. And yeah, it's not a good idea, but that's why they have a big parking lot for that. Okay, there's no marker there. Let me see about the back ways. Nope. And at one point, I guess there were public restrooms here. And obviously they want to keep people away from those caves. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people have tried going back there, but yeah. Very tempting, but I would not risk it. But yeah, the Piasa bird. Many ways it's been painted over to make it look better, you know, weather conditions. Here, let me get a better view of that. Here we go. There's another cave entrance right there, but I'm not going to risk it. I was going to do a full episode of this at one point in time, but I was like, well, I'm here anyway. It'll be part of my meeting of the Great Rivers Scenic Byway episode. Glad I did. And now we are at the somewhat hidden park along the Great River Road. It's called Great Rivers Park, according to this historical marker here. And by the way, we are now in the city of Godfrey. Now, Godfrey, it's a great community, but the way it is spread out is really strange. Like, it covers basically the northwestern part of Madison County. There is no downtown, downtown Godfrey. It wasn't even until 30 years ago that it was declared, became a city in its own right. But here's a little history behind it. Now, it basically just says in 1817, Jacob and Sarah Lurton traveled from Louisville, Kentucky with their family and settled here where they found land with the attributes necessary for whiskey making. The village was known as Monticello for a short time originally, and the growth of the village was quite slow. But it wasn't until 1832 a gentleman named Benjamin Godfrey came here, and he was a shipmaster and merchant trader. He was a genius. He was a co-owner of Godfrey, Gilman and Company, a freight forwarding company with a shipping warehouse located on the riverfront in Alton. 1835, it was the most successful and fastest growing business in the state of Illinois, shipping products all the way to New Orleans. The village of Monticello saw its most significant change in 1837 following the murder of Elijah P. Lovejoy at Godfrey's warehouse in Alton. Now, Godfrey already had plans underway to build a seminary for women in Monticello, which would provide an education for his 7 daughters. In order to separate the college and community from the violence associated with the murder, Godfrey platted the village around the seminary. The village officials applied for a post office in 1841. They learned there was another city in Illinois named Monticello. And I believe that one's by Peoria, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it was then that the village reluctantly adopted the name Godfrey, of course, after Benjamin Godfrey. More than 170 years later, the legacy of Benjamin Godfrey still lives on today in the seminary buildings that are now part of Lewis and Clark Community College, which I'm a proud alumnus of. I'm not going to read the bombs of those, but yes, this is pretty much where I am right now, number 10, as I'm coming into, to Jersey County. And then on the back of the marker, it talks more about what Godfrey has to offer historically wise, such as the La Vista Park and Trail, Lewis and Clark Community College. There's the Benjamin Godfrey Chapel, the Sacagawea College. Sacagawea statue. My bad. There's also the Lindbergh Relay Station. That was where Charles Lindbergh once landed in the mid-20s before he became a worldwide sensation. He used to store supplies during his mail deliveries between St. Louis and Chicago. There's also Glazebrook Park, and there's also the Alton Nature Preserve. So yeah, there's definitely lots to offer in Godfrey. Now, I'm one of those people, I kind of lump Alton and Godfrey together, which I know may offend some local residents, but because they're kind of, sandwiched together. And I also did a video of the last remaining Mr. Donut, which is in Godfrey. So how about that? I want to check out this area real quick. Oh man, what a nice wall. There's a 4-sided marker right there, which I'll get into. I won't read the whole thing, but I'll start with this. The village of Godfrey dedicates this park to its first mayor, Lars Hoffman, and his wife, Judy, in honor of their contributions to the betterment of our community. The circle of life teaches us we are all children of the earth. May we leave the earth a better place than it once was left for us. Now, Lars Hoffman passed away, I want to say 15 years ago. I never knew the man personally. I mean, I met him a couple times, but I never had him as an instructor. Yes, he was the first mayor of Godfrey when it became a city 30-some years ago, but he went back to his teaching job at Lewis and Clark at Community College. And I've never heard anything negative about the guy. The guy was very passionate about his teaching and everything. And if you want to know what he looks like, here he is right here. Now, he also told ghost stories. Now, Lewis and Clark Community College is known as one of the haunted places here in Illinois. And there are a lot of legends, a lot of them that I've heard, and many people have heard probably the same ones I have, like Harriet Haskell. But he always told the story of Miss Haskell as well as a bunch of others. But nothing has been said about Lars himself haunting the building, so. This basically talks about the animals, the circle of life. And then what can be found, like the remains of the past, like the limestone and everything. So yeah, very cool. I'm gonna give one last shot of the park and then we're gonna move on. All right, awesome. at Clifton Terrace Park. And it's pretty decent. This is what I'm stepping on is the bike trail, the Vidalbine Trail that links to it, or there's also part of it down there. But this is a four-sided marker that talks about the history of Clifton Terrace. It was one time a village here on the River Road, but unfortunately, I mean, yeah, there's signs that say it's Clifton Terrace, but unfortunately, you know, it has faded over the years. But here's a little history. It was done by a German-American immigrant named John Gottlieb Terrace, who settled in the area in approximately 1850. And he brought one of his German traditions to the Midwest. He brought grapevines from his home on the Neckar River in Germany and built grape arbors at Clifton Terrace because it was reminiscent of his homeland. The stone terraces located on the site were built by Louis over a 13-year period from 1852 to 1865. Originally, the terraces extended row upon row to the top of the bluff. Clifton Terrace derives its name from the existence of these terraces along the cliffs. At the base of the terraces, a 30 by 60 wine cellar remains, lined with hand-chiseled arched stones. I wonder if it's probably all off limits. I can't even see anything, but in 1874, Louis opened the Clifton Inn to accommodate St. Louis Cement and Lime Company employees who worked at a cement plant on Clifton Terrace Road. Later years, weekend tourists arrived by a paddle wheel boat to enjoy wine, home-cooked meals, and the lush riverfront countryside. The wine made at this winery was known as Sweet Steeret's Wine and was very popular in the St. Louis region. 1895, H.A. Fisher built a competing hotel along the riverfront directly in front of the Clifton Inn. Louis encountered by adding cottages, a large pavilion, dance hall, refreshment stands, and picnic tables and benches. And then, yeah, Fisher's establishment was lavish and drew wealthier vacationers, but it was destroyed by fire in the early 1900s. Today, the village of Godfrey runs the old Clifton Inn. So, a little history behind that. This is just the history of the park. This was planned in 1994, and this was dedicated on September 1st, 1996 to, you know, memorialize the former community. And then there's, you know, the railroads and how it connected along the Great River Road. Now, interestingly, it says here the Great River Road was completed in 1944 and extended from Alton to the Ryle Landing, which is 1 mile upstream from here. In 1966, the rest of the Great River Road was completed to Grafton. This section of the Great River Road was constructed as a scenic highway, largely due to the inspiration of John D. McAdams, which was named McAdams Highway in his honor. Never heard of that before. And then the bicycle trail, the Vidalbine Bicycle Trail, was completed in 1976. It was a demonstration bicycle trail. This talks about La Vista Park, which is on Illinois Route 3, I think a couple miles that way. You gotta go up Clifton Terrace Road to do that. Alright, so if you look behind those trees, yes, there is some walls. This might be what the marker was talking about. Oh, look, there's a door too. I'm sure I can't get in there. Yeah, it's locked. Wow, look at this. Look at all those soda cans. Man. Stuff that you don't see. Alright, now we're gonna go make our way into Elsah. And now we're at a little town that is said to be frozen in time. And that was not deemed by me, that was deemed by the press. The village is Elsah, established 1853. I think it was 1973, this whole community was put on the National Register of Historic Places. And behind the sign, I'm just going to take you to the map. And here's just a little map of it. Yeah, there's really, it doesn't look like there's very much. And really there isn't, but, you know, I don't know if it's one of those places where you can spend a day here. I mean, you can walk around, kind of admire the old structures and everything. Oh, I think they got a couple churches here. They have a village hall. They got a bed and breakfast. And they got a buggy shop. And then Principia College is just up that hill. You gotta go like a mile or two up that way. But if you're visiting Principia College for whatever reason, if you're not a student or a faculty member, they will question you at the entrance. I'm telling you this because I know this from experience. I just kind of wanted to look around, see what the college was like. Well, the driver or the security guard at the entrance was like, no, you gotta have a better reason. I'm just like, okay, whatever. So yeah, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. But for those who want to experience Elsah, I mean, the best place to start is just that way. It kind of loops around, and then this is like the ending point. And then it goes back to the Great River Road. And there really isn't much going on today. This is during the week. It's on a Thursday I'm doing this. But people do live here, and the shops aren't really open until the weekends. But yeah, I like these old street signs. Now that is behind a village hall and the museum, and they do have public restrooms at the bottom. See that door right there? And there's another map. This looks to be an old buggy carriage. But yeah, it looks really cool, very retro. And I'm just gonna go up that hill. And this is the Maple Leaf Cottage Inn Bed and Breakfast. They do want you to call ahead of time. It was established in 1949. Nice. And this is the Village Hall. And it looks like the museum is open today. Pretty cool. Here's a really old building. Can't tell if it's a store, but it looks like they got a really nice train set in the window. A lot of old antiques. But yeah, I highly recommend stopping here at some point in time. But yeah, it is definitely frozen in time. I'm just even referring to that balcony up there. Alright, we're going to move on to the next community. So as you're entering Grafton on the right, you'll be greeted by the Edward Amberg History Museum and Visitor Center. Today it is open. I may stop in. And then here's a little something about the Railroad Illinois Terminal Company. Looks like there's a marker there too. All right, so it talks about the Dinky. It was a city bus converted for passenger use on the line between Alton and Grafton. And it was from 1933 to 1954. It was pretty much a 29 passenger school bus, and it stopped at Alton, Clifton, Terrace, Elsah, Chautauqua, and Grafton. Tickets were 35 cents. And then it was sent, the original number 206, which is this right here. It was saved from being scrapped, and in 1954 it was sent to the National Museum of Transportation in St. Louis, completely restored, and is currently on permanent exhibit. How nice. I went to jail in Grafton, Illinois, probably for speeding. You know, I'm just kidding. Oh, I can go in too. Nice. Huh. Well, how about that? I am in jail, baby. Except I can get out whenever I want to. Alright, and here is that museum. I think I'm going to go in today for a change. Here's a replica of the lighthouse. Definitely shows the history of Grafton. Wow. Here's an old phonograph player. A lot of history about the Grafton schools. Grafton one time had a high school, but it didn't last until 1952. Alright, so now I'm at the Grafton City Park, and it pays tribute to all the veterans who have served here in Grafton. But Grafton is famous to many small businesses, bed and breakfast. There's that lighthouse again. And then there's also Aries Resort and Winery. There's also the Grafton Winery. And when you see that there's ski lifts, one of these days I'm going to do that. Now, if you're going to go to Aries, it's on top of the hill, and there's many ways to get there. You can get there through there, but I highly recommend taking a bus. They have a bus that takes you up there. If your car or truck or RV can't handle it, then definitely make the most of your experience of Grafton, that's for sure. One of my favorite places to eat in Grafton is Beastly Fish. They're really cool, and they definitely give you big portions, and I'll show you that. And as you can see, there's quite a line to get in. That's how popular they are. And as you can see, I ordered the buffalo fish with cocktail sauce with fries. This only cost me $12, and it's cheap because they are cash only, but for the right reasons. So definitely bring some cash if you're going to eat here. All right, time to chow down. So this is Route 100 as it continues all along the Illinois River Road. And I'm at this park where there's a playground and a picnic pavilion. Well, there's a double-sided historical marker here. It tells about the history of Grafton. So basically it just talks about that the land that is now Grafton was host to a number of prehistoric civilizations and Native American tribes drawn to the river as a resource. It was not until the early 1800s that the city finally started to form its roots, guided by the vision of James Mason. Mason purchased the land that is Grafton and established a ferry crossing both rivers, allowing him to conduct business with St. Louis. And here's a map of all of the, like as you're driving through Main Street on Route 100. This is Route 3 that takes you to Godfrey. But it says at one time there was manufacturing companies, mills, quarries, loading docks, and riverboat traffic. So yes, Grafton was definitely busy back in its day. Over here it says, boat construction began in the 1850s with everything from steamboats to paddle wheelers manufactured here. Quarrying was also a lucrative industry, with limestone being used for homes, buildings, and the construction of St. Louis landmarks such as Old Cathedral and Eads Bridge. Grafton was also considered to be the largest freshwater port on the Mississippi River, with holding tanks on the river stocked with carp, buffalo, and catfish. And then the time of bustling business and thriving industry on the riverfront in Grafton began to fade by 1900, with many businesses closing their doors. including the Grafton Manufacturing Company. This is possibly due to railroads and eventually roads where cars drive on. But the main street that was once home to butcher shops, pharmacies, general stores, and a hotel became mixed with commercial and residential dwellings. Today, the city has changed its course to become reborn as a relaxing tourist tourist retreat. Sorry, I read that wrong. I have also heard Grafton known as today as the Key West of the Midwest, as there are plenty of cottages you can stay at, and it's kind of got like a, what do you call it, I usually call it a Jimmy Buffett vibe, like, hey, let's sip some beer and relax by the river. And here's some more. It doesn't really have much history on it, but it does say that with the river at its doorstep, it is not uncommon for minor flooding to occur as a sign of the passing seasons. Grafton's first catastrophic encounter with the rising waters of the river was in 1844, and the shipping wharf and the lower bottoms of the city were destroyed, and that was at 32.13 feet of water. In 1973, over a century later, the river reached a new record high at 33.12 feet. Now, I'm old enough to remember the Great Flood of 1993, and that was proven to be the most devastating of all of them, as floodwaters reached their peak at 38.17 feet. When the water returned to its banks, the damage was irreversible for 22 structures that had to be removed. But despite the destruction caused, the people of this town dried themselves off and rebuilt the city around them. That's definitely an inspirational story. Alright, here's a notable stop. Now there is a parking area just up the road, and it's going to take you to this cross up there. But there's a plaque on there that says, at this place in early August 1673, Marquette, Joliet, and 5 companions entered Illinois down heralds of religion, civil government, and consecrated labor. And this was dedicated on September 1st, 1929 by the Reverend James Griffin, D.D., the Bishop of Springfield, Illinois. So what I'm going to do is go up these steps. Definitely be careful. They are very steep and yeah, kind of narrow. Well, not narrow, but yeah, you get the idea. Alright, so here is the cross. And that, of course, is Highway 100. And we're looking at swampy areas, and behind those trees is the Mississippi or the Illinois River. I believe this is a spot where the two rivers meet, but unfortunately we can't see it. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and get a little frontal view of the cross. Looks really nice. I'm glad it has not been vandalized or anything like that. Alright, now we're going to go back down. And there's a historical marker. But we're going to backtrack a little bit about the meaning of where the name of Pere Marquette State Park came from. It came from Father Jacques Marquette, a French Jesuit missionary priest who came to North America to share his faith with the native people. Father Marquette joined an expedition led by Louis Joliet, commissioned in 1673 by the governor of New France to explore the Mississippi River and determine if it was an inland water route to the Pacific Ocean. So Marquette and Joliet set out from St. Ignace in birch bark canoes and traveled on the Fox and Wisconsin rivers to the Mississippi River. They continued as far south as the Arkansas River. Convinced that the Mississippi flowed to the Gulf of Mexico, they worked their way back upstream. On their return voyage, they traveled up the Illinois River, passing by what is now the park. And this is what Marquette wrote in his journal of a written description of the land, which is now Illinois. We have seen nothing like this river, the Illinois River that is. for the fertility of the land, its prairies, woods, wild cattle, elk, deer, wildcats, bustards, swans, ducks, parrots, and even beaver. Its many small lakes and rivers. That on which we sail is wide, deep, and still. So yes, this is where they started, and then they traveled that way to here, and then to there, and then like I said, ended here at the Arkansas River meeting, and went back up, and then went to the Illinois River. Very interesting stuff. And here at this house, or this building, where I imagine where all the ferrymen report to, there's a historical marker right here. But yes, from Alton to Grafton to Calhoun County, access to the river was one of the primary reasons for planting and settling the river towns found along the meeting of the Great Rivers National Scenic Byway. Calhoun County has always been geographically isolated on a peninsula bordered by the Illinois and Mississippi rivers. Early ferries were critical for river trade and important for access to the county. And now and here's something I didn't know. During the heyday of river commerce, there were many competing ferries. Today there are 3 ferries and 1 bridge leading to the towns of Calhoun County. I know there's one in Missouri, but that you have to pay because, you know, you're not going within the state. But yes, there is the Joe Page Lift Bridge in Hardin that was built in 1930 and is the southernmost bridge crossing the Illinois River. The Brussels Ferry, owned and operated by the state of Illinois, is one of the most convenient means of crossing into the county. And then it mostly talks about the wildlife refuge and what you can expect over there. And there's another marker on the back. Talks some more about what you can expect in Calhoun County. It's a county for all seasons. And talks about a little about history. The Native Americans were the first inhabitants of the Illinois River Valley thousands of years ago. And talks about the Coster site, one of the richest archaeological sites in North America, represents 10,000 years of human occupation in the region, and the archaeology aspect of it. And then the first permanent European settler was a French trapper by the name of O'Neill, who settled in Point Precinct in 1801 and lived in a cave until his death in 1842. And then I'm going to fast forward to 1825. The county was divided and the southern portion was named Calhoun for Vice President John Caldwell Calhoun. So, in other words, it was actually part of Pike County, which is north of Calhoun. And then talks about the industry. Now, us locals, we know that there are plenty of peach orchards, and yep, there you go. And then its earliest industry was lumbering and farms. So it's definitely puts a nail in the head. Here's a map of Calhoun County. And then there's also something called the Barn Quilt Tour. In 2008, a group of community members interested in preserving the agricultural and rural heritage of the county created the Barn Quilt Tour. More than 85 quilt blocks have been painted on the sides of barns dotted across the county landscape. Sounds like a interesting hunt. A little time consumption, but hey, anybody who's done it, let me know in the comments. All right, so I'm gonna go back on the road. Pere Marquette. In 1673, Father Pere Marquette, missionary priest, and Louis Joliet, fur trader, left Canada to explore the Mississippi River. They returned by the Illinois River, passing near this area. Their travels covered 4 months and 2,500 miles. And that, of course, is a statue of him. And then this is where it ends, right here. All right, thanks so much for tuning into this episode of Historically Marked. I hope I took you on a great educational journey and some great views and other pieces of history. So I hope you get to travel this road sometime in the future. All right, I am Jason in Jersey County, Illinois, outside Rosedale. Sign off.